Well, good evening and welcome to the fourth edition of Mirador's Round Table. And I deliberately hold that, oh, wait a minute, we can't waste it. Because tonight we're going to talk about food and drink. I am terrified that because of the lockdown, that when we're let out, that the cost of oysters and champagne is going to rocket and be beyond my ability to pay for it. Is that going to happen to anything? What's going to happen to foodstuffs? What will happen to farmers? What will happen to everything that we have to do with food? Will our diet change? Well, tonight I have my regular panel of Melissa, Annie, and Paul, and we're going to discuss that. And I hope that we come to the conclusion at the end that oysters will lower in price and champagne will be made free. What's your view, Melissa?
Well, here in the States, you are starting to see some food inflation, but it's with certain products. Of course, the cleaning supplies, it's a big deal. For some reason, toilet paper, I don't understand that. But you're starting to see the stock in the supermarkets coming back to somewhat normal. And yes, the food prices have gone up slightly. I really cannot see, however, the industry really pushing it too far, given how many layoffs we've had and how people are struggling. So I can't see that going through the roof for your regular groceries. I'm starting to see, certainly in the States, in the southern part of the country, you're seeing restaurants opening, not too much social distancing, which is a bit discerning. But in New York, in the area where I am, they're starting to open up in phases. So not quite with the restaurants, but we do have a lot of takeout. So we have things available, and takeout is expensive. I'm not going to say it's not.
I'm happy to say that I've just had notification that Suzanne Mouchot has joined us from New York. So why don't we take the opportunity to go over to her and ask for her opinion. And what we're just talking about, Suzanne, is will the cost of foodstuff go up, particularly the luxury sort that I like?
I think they've definitely already gone up, although I think that and they were also, the supply was lower too. But now they seem to be kind of leveling off a little bit. But I actually just ordered some beautiful Parmigiano Reggiano that just went down about $2 a pound. So that was nice.
Are you a cheese person?
I guess so, yeah.
Right, so your pocketbook is going to be hit straight away.
Yes,
now,
straight away.
Annie, you have to feed a family, and you went shopping this afternoon, I know. So what's your view?
Well, the supermarkets are well stocked. Nothing's missing. Haven't really seen any difference in price yet. But they use the virus situation to say they will not. They are not doing the special sales anymore. So buy one get one free, or two for £1, or anything like that. So everything has its own price now. Whereas before you could find lots of things half price or buy one get one free. I am worried that I think the price will go up after this because there's no one to harvest the crops at the moment.
No, so, that's a problem, isn't it, in the UK?
In the UK, yes. Yes. So when a member of the government stands in front of the TV and says, we need British people to come and harvest our crops, you know you're in trouble.
And it's the same thing here. It's the same thing here in the States with the meat packing plants that were closed because of COVID cases. So although honestly, I didn't see that at the stores. There seems to be plenty of meat. So whether that continues or not, I don't know.
I think we'll find out after. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I think we're just going to have to cast our minds into the future a little bit, because as has been said all the way through the lockdown, nobody really knows what's going to happen. So I think we need to pull upon our experience, both as journalists and as consumers, to see what we think will happen. Let me give Paul a chance to have a word, and then perhaps we'll come back and discuss what you just said about the imported labour, Annie, a bit more. Now, Paul, you're the economist, and not only that, I know the sort of things that you like. You join me in oysters and champagne. So how are we going to be affected?
Okay. I'll give you an example of surplus and the differences in Britain. I spoke to my friend in the Isle of Mull today, which is quite a famous island, and they do oysters, they do all kinds of fish, and there's a bit of a surplus. So the lucky inhabitants, 2,500, are getting oysters, scallops, champagne, whiskey at about 20–30% of the price. So
Damn it, and I can't fly there.
We should all head for Mull. That's the first thing.
Okay, the economy generally is
Secondly,
going to push up prices.
is Brighton, which is
The economy generally, Paul, is it going to push up prices?
Yes and no. I don't like to predict. Eventually, yes, I think, because they'll have to make up. But at the moment, taking Brighton and London, two places I know very well, prices seem to be okay. There's still discounts going, supermarkets doing their best, but there will be pressure once lockdown is over that they'll have to put prices up, along with other things. So yes, I probably would take that view.
I just as an aside, I read in one of the local social media pages today that Aldi, which is a German company, and the prices are very good, and the standards of food are very high. But whether this was a tongue-in-cheek article or not, I have no idea. But the author said that they'd been roped together in groups of 6 and described what it was like when the first person stopped or the last person had forgotten something. And it's absolutely hilarious. If indeed they have been roping them together, what a wonderful thing to happen. But I thought that it was amusing enough for us to break a serious conversation to hear about. Right, Annie, let's go back to you, because you're worried about the fact that crops are going to rot in the fields.
Well, we shall see, won't we? Apparently, only a third of the Eastern Europeans are in the country. So a third of those people who would normally tend to the crop and harvest the crops. What they mentioned was people from Romania and Bulgaria. So we'll see, but that's the case everywhere else as well. I mean, Germany is sending aeroplanes abroad to the eastern countries and to bring them into their country to harvest the crops. So I think we're not going to be the only ones who will have this issue.
Are we sending aeroplanes?
I actually heard, I'm not sure who it was, but someone from Britain said it cost him £40,000 to bring 120 foreigners, but I'm not sure which country from.
Right. So there's a possibility with that we're going to be paying for that £40,000 with the cost of strawberries rising.
We will have to, yeah. I'm pretty sure, because if I assume British people will ask for more money, basically, because not many people are used to going onto the fields and harvest crops.
Right.
So, yeah, and if the price of that will go up, then we will pay more.
So inflationary. We'll come back to your Paul on that, but Melissa, labour shortages to actually harvest crops. Any problem there in the States?
Yeah, you are seeing problems with the farmers. Certainly the border closings with Mexico, where a lot of the migrants come from, it's been closed. And so, yes, they are having some problems with the farmers, but I know a lot of it is mechanized. So even the berries, they don't necessarily have to go in the fields for that, but there are certainly shortages of people for packing these items. And so I haven't yet really seen an increase in the price of berries, for example, but it's possible it could come.
What about generally? Do you see inflationary tendencies? I mean, after all, you are an economist in a broader sense.
I don't see it going too far. It's just not something that people are going to be able to tolerate. I mean, you're looking at a nearly 20% unemployment rate. You can't raise prices on people who have no money. So I think it's going to be tempered, certainly.
Is that going to impact on taxes?
Oh, taxes, it's a whole nother subject. I'm pretty sure, given the amount of deficit spending that has been going on in the United States, even prior to COVID-19, definitely there's going to come an end to the road where there's just only so much debt that a government can handle. And then, yes, they're going to have to raise taxes. Although certainly the Democratic candidate, Joe Biden, was saying that he won't raise taxes on anybody with salaries of $400,000 or less. So, I mean, that may mean an increase or a rescinding of the corporate tax bill that occurred in 2017. So we'll see.
Suzanne.
Yes.
You're presumably licking your lips and saying they're going to need new designs for storage facilities.
Yeah. No, there's been an incredible influx of designer opportunities for the revisions of designs based on COVID. So office space redesigns, I run a university, so we're completely redesigning classrooms, lab spaces. There's a great opportunity for architects, designers, engineers, all of the mechanical equipment's being redesigned right now as well to meet new requirements that were developed by our governing group called ASHRAE. So lots of opportunity for people who are in that industry. Yeah.
So one man's meat is another man's poison, if you'll excuse me saying, man.
You know, it's interesting. It's actually more kind of a sign of the deferred maintenance that's been going on around, particularly in a lot of commercial spaces and in higher education. You know, mechanical equipment has a useful life period, and so a lot of those are coming up now. And so it's a question of whether or not you buy all new equipment. Yeah, I would say that. What's interesting about what's happening, and this has actually happened through any kind of pandemic through history, and also any kind of major societal change about how we want to relate with each other in space, proportions change. And when the proportions change, that means you either need more space, or you need less space, or you need different space. You know, even in the advent of the current bathroom is actually from the Spanish flu era, you know, where there was a real great need to make sure that everything was easily cleaned and also individualized as well, used by less people. And the American with Disabilities Act in the United States in 1991, when that came about, that completely changed proportion for so many spaces. And so there was a lot of opportunity for architects and contractors and construction. Yeah.
Well, who's not answering the phone?
I don't know. That's my bat phone. I've got to go.
So the gloom that surrounds me, nobody will know who I'm talking about except older Americans. Joe Plafust. I've got a little black cloud over my head because of the oyster and champagne situation, but you actually see a silver lining.
Suzanne does?
Sorry?
Yes, well, you know, what I think about silver linings is sometimes they're more obvious than others. I think it's a little bit harder to find them this time, but they do exist. And I mean, even just the opportunities for families to be together. I mean, I know it's also in some ways been very, very difficult, but boy, these kids will remember being with their parents day and night for months and months, you know, so.
Paul. You've been a banker, you know, one of those Uriah Heep type characters who rubs his hand at any sign of trouble because you're going to make lots of money. How is this going to affect the banks? And I'm talking specifically about feeding and watering the population.
Okay, my first view is predictions are very easy to make. Secondly, I think that the taxes compensation, all the schemes that have come in have been very quick short-term solution. Therefore, it's like jack straws, everything's up in the air. My view is that, I think as one fund manager said, look at the end of the year. At the moment, we think we're in a bit of a chaotic situation, etc. By the end of the year, who knows? If lockdown happens, say June, July, August, there'll be a settlement time for the economy to see how it goes. I don't like to say what will happen because it's too early. We're in unprecedented financial times where if you look at everyday compensation in America, the consumers being helped out. I just see a lot of infrastructure spending, as Melissa said, the taxation will certainly need to be looked at. But I would say, let's look at the end of the year. I think we're in a kind of, not comparing the Second World War, it's as though, hey, this period is ending, suddenly there's a big chasm. Let's see what happens next 3 or 4 months. I'd say if I had to be pegged down, middle of next year, you'll be seeing the economies, I think, doing reasonably well. I know it sounds a quick fix, but I do believe that we've got to just take stock of what's happened, give it a few months settlement, as one American economist said, end of the year, we review things and then look on. So I couldn't really comment on that, but I'm not trying to dodge the issue. I think it's too early with such a short-term solutions given by the government, which they had to do. Now we've got to a period of settlement where we've then got to put in the structures for what could be a new economic model. So I see a bridge, first of all, to lockdown, then end of the year, review economy, and then next year, we'll probably see a new economic model. And that's my opinion anyway.
Melissa, any comment on that?
Yeah, here's the situation. Prior to COVID, you started to see a lot of leveraging among corporations, taking on a lot of debt. So there's debt, you've got government debt, you've got corporate debt, and household debt. So all you really needed, honestly, was a trigger to really send the house of cards just falling. And COVID certainly is that trigger. The question is, who will survive? So it's really going to be those corporations, those companies, and those consumers, those households that were well positioned going into COVID. But there was an awful lot of leverage going on. So it should be quite interesting. You're already seeing a collapse in the retail sector. Many of them are the older brands that really weren't keeping up are going bankrupt. So
I just wanted everybody to see my survival kit. I'm all right. I think actually we're coming to the end of our slot. We've been very good. We've only gone 18 minutes in a 15-minute program in the last week, so let's not try to break records. But one of the things that we did say that it may happen is that diets would change. Is the diet changing in your household? Two young children and a mother?
No, but if someone could lock away the biscuits and chocolates in my house, that would be great.
But you're eating more or less what you did before?
Yes, so far, yes.
Suzanne,
but a lot more of it.
A lot more. You know, it's funny. I felt like when this first started happening that I quickly had to rush and buy any meat that I could buy, like protein. I thought that, you know, that we would be, you know, squirreled up for a while and not have any access to anything. And of course, that ended up not really happening. So we've since gone from a more meat diet that was occurring at the beginning to a more plant-based diet because I think it's a little much. So, but I think what I've heard from my friends and colleagues is that, you know, the first month and a half was just so nerve-wracking and so worrisome that everyone was sort of nesting in a way. And now people are feeling like there is potentially some relief and that they can start going kind of back to their old selves again. So.
Now, most people will know that Melissa is the Countess and hosts one of our food shows. So a final word on diet from you, Melissa? Well,
what do they say? They say the quarantine 15 and COVID 10, meaning pounds gained. So, I think people are eating comfort food. They want to feel better. But yeah, Suzanne is right. As people go out more like they're doing this weekend, they'll start to hopefully start eating better and exercising.
And Paul, you're like me, one of the last of the gin and tonic men. How about your diet?
You do me a disservice. I'm having cheese and bread most days, Keith, and I feel very healthy. My view is that we're going to now reconsider things. I think it might sound crazy, this period actually will help us in some ways diet-wise especially, because we've all been eating probably more sensibly, probably having wine and beer like you are, Keith, yes. But I'm actually only having 2 meals a day. I feel much healthier, lots of walks. I think we'll probably learn a lesson from all this.
I haven't.
I know you, Keith.
I have to say that I have changed my diet dramatically. It has gone to a very liquid diet, but I still feel very healthy, and I am taking liquids 3 times a day. Thank you to the panel this evening. We'll see you soon. Well, we'll see you next week when we return with Mirador's Round Table, which often is not round, but nonetheless, it brings out the best in us. Thank you for all the participants, and to you, Toodle Pip, good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.